Every time we open a book, listen to a podcast, or simply get lost in a story at the bar, we enter a world. But have you ever wondered why some stories teach us, others make us dream, and still others captivate us with mystery? Today, we'll not only uncover the differences between fables, fairy tales, novellas, and short stories, but also explore how each genre, from its most ancient roots to its most modern forms, shapes the way we see the world, stimulating our imagination and sometimes even our morals. Get ready because what you discover will change the way you read forever. We live in an age where time is a precious resource. For this reason, short stories, with their ability to capture attention in just a few pages, have a timeless appeal. From the quick message you read on your smartphone to a comedian's brilliant quip, to the short texts that accompany us every day, brevity has become a virtue. But behind this brevity lies a variety of genres, each with its own characteristics, purposes, and language. Today we'll dive into this very universe, starting with its oldest and most fascinating forms, the fable and the fairy tale. These are two genres that are often confused, used almost synonymously in everyday language, yet, as we'll see, they have substantial differences that reflect profoundly different narrative purposes. It's a bit like confusing a lemon with an orange. Both are citrus fruits, but the flavor, use, and experience they offer are unique. Understanding these distinctions is not just an academic exercise, but a way to sharpen our readership and fully appreciate the richness of each story we encounter. Let's start with the fable. Think of how many times you've heard "it's just a fable" used in a somewhat derogatory tone, almost as if to diminish the truth of a story. Well, that's a big mistake. The roots of the fable reach deep into antiquity. Examples of short narratives featuring talking animals can be found as early as ancient Mesopotamia, but it was with figures such as Aesop in the 6th century BC in Greece and then Phaedrus in the 1st century AD in Rome that the fable took on a more structured form and a clearly defined didactic role. These authors did not write simply to entertain. Their intent was first and foremost to educate. The distinctive feature of the fable is the presence of anthropomorphic animals, that is, animals that behave, speak, and think like human beings. The lion is strong and domineering, the fox is cunning and deceitful, the ant is industrious and far-sighted, the grasshopper is carefree and superficial. These animals are not chosen at random. They embody human vices and virtues, making the characters instantly recognizable and universal. It is no coincidence that these types have remained unchanged over the centuries, because the weaknesses and strengths of the human soul are always the same, regardless of the era. The main purpose of the fable is, in fact, didactic. Its entire narrative mechanism is constructed to convey a moral, a teaching, a life lesson. This moral, often made explicit at the end of the story with phrases like, "Here's the moral of the story," is the beating heart of the fable. Consider the fable of the fox and the grapes. The fox who can't catch the grapes and thinks they're unripe isn't just a funny story. It's a profound reflection on the justification of our failures, on the contempt for what we can't achieve. Or the ant and the grasshopper, a reminder of the importance of foresight and hard work. These stories don't tell us what to think, but show us how to think in certain situations, guiding us toward ethical principles and socially beneficial behaviors. The style of the fable is deliberately short, concise, and direct. There are no descriptive frills or lengthy psychological digressions. Every word serves the plot and the final message. The language is simple and easily understandable precisely because the aim is to reach the widest possible audience, from children to adults, and leave an indelible mark on their moral conscience. The setting is often generic and timeless. It doesn't matter whether the story takes place in a forest or a savanna, nor whether it's set in ancient Greece or 1,000 years later. What matters is the action and the final moral, which transcend time and space. It is a genre that, in a certain sense, sacrifices the complexity of the plot and characters in favor of a clear and universal message. Let's now move on to the fairy tale, the genre that more than any other made us dream as children. If the fairy tale is the school of life, the fairy tale is the gateway to the imagination. Its main characteristic, what radically distinguishes it from fairy tales, is its magical and fantastical component. Here we're not just talking animals, but an entire universe of spells, potions, mythological creatures, magical objects, and impossible transformations. The protagonists of fairy tales are often humans, princesses, poor farmers, young orphans, who find themselves immersed in a world populated by extraordinary creatures: fairies, ogres, dragons, wicked witches, dwarves, giants, woodland spirits. And of course, there's no shortage of spells that break curses, talking animals that provide unexpected help, magic mirrors that reveal hidden truths, magic wands, and seven-league boots. The fairy tale is a triumph of the impossible that becomes real, a place where the logic of the ordinary world is suspended to make room for that of the marvelous. Famous examples abound. Think of the Brothers Grimm in Germany, who collected an immense wealth of folk tales and transformed them into fairy tales such as Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, or Snow White, or Charles Perrault in France with his versions of Cinderella and Puss in Boots. These authors didn't invent these stories from scratch, they crystallized them from a thousand-year-old oral tradition, giving them a written form and spreading them throughout Europe. Hans Christian Andersen, on the other hand, is a special case, having created fairy tales such as The Little Mermaid and The Ugly Duckling, with a unique psychological depth and pathos. The purpose of fairy tales is twofold. On the one hand, to entertain and stimulate the reader's imagination, transporting them to distant and fascinating worlds. On the other, however, it explores profound and universal themes: true love, fear of the unknown, justice triumphing over evil, the eternal struggle between good and evil, the passage from childhood to adulthood, and the search for self. Although it doesn't have an explicit moral like a fable, fairy tales offer a more complex and symbolic vision of the world. Often the happy ending isn't just a narrative resolution, but a symbol of hope, of redemption, of the possibility of overcoming adversity. The setting of a fairy tale is usually more defined than that of a fable, while still maintaining an aura of mystery. Imposing castles, enchanted forests, distant kingdoms, remote villages, these places are not just backdrops, but often characters themselves steeped in magic and danger. The language is richer and more evocative, capable of painting vivid images in the reader's mind, and the plot is often more complex with trials to overcome, unexpected allies, and enemies to defeat. The fairy tale is an initiatory journey, an adventure that allows us to face our fears and celebrate our victories, even if only with our imagination. So far, we have talked about genres with deep roots in the past, often linked to oral tradition and to educational purposes or pure fantasy entertainment. But with the evolution of literature and society, genres are born and established that focus more on the representation of reality, blurring the boundaries between the ordinary and the exceptional. Here we enter the territory of the short story and the short story, two narrative forms that, while sharing brevity, differ in intensity, focus, and scope. Gised. While fables and fairy tales take us to ideal or symbolic worlds, short stories and tales bring us back with different nuances to the human experience, to its complexities and its infinite declinations. This is where we begin to see the art of observing everyday life and transforming it into something extraordinary. The short story is a genre that emerged in Europe in the Middle Ages, reaching its maturity during the Renaissance. The very word novella suggests something new, a recent event, or a fact. The short story, in fact, focuses on a single event or a particular situation, narrated with a usually more linear structure than a novel. But with a complexity and depth that surpass the brevity of the fable or the magic of the fairy tale, its structure is compact and almost surgical: a limited number of characters, a plot that develops around a central point, and an ending that often closes the story cleanly, sometimes with a twist. There are no unnecessary digressions. Everything serves the narrative. The short story is like a magnifying glass focused on a fragment of life, an episode that illuminates an aspect of human nature or social dynamics. The style is often realistic, attentive to details that create a believable atmosphere and to dialogues that reveal the characters' personalities. What truly sets the novella apart is the particular attention paid to the characters' psychology and the analysis of their feelings. They are not archetypes like the animals in fables, nor mythical figures like fairy tale characters, but individuals with their own thoughts, emotions, and contradictions. Their motivations, their passions, their anxieties are explored. The most famous example is undoubtedly Giovanni Boccaccio's Decameron, written in the 14th century. In this collection, Boccaccio narrates 100 short stories in 10 days told by a group of young people who have taken refuge in the countryside to escape the plague. His short stories are a vibrant fresco of the society of the time, exploring universal themes such as love in all its forms, from the sacred to the profane, fortune that can elevate or destroy, and the human condition with its virtues and vices. Think of Ser Ceparello, an evil man who becomes a saint through pure mockery, or Gismunda who defends her love against her father's wrath. Boccaccio shows us living characters, with their wiles, their passions, their tragedies, and their comedies, offering an incredibly modern glimpse into human nature. The short story, therefore, is a genre that invites us to reflect on the complexity of existence, through stories that, though short, resonate within us for a long time. If the short story has a precise focus on events and psychology, the tale is perhaps the most versatile and open genre of short fiction. It's a flexible container that encompasses a vast array of themes, styles, and forms, from the 19th century to the present day. It's a genre that adapts to any type of story and can explore almost every facet of the human experience and beyond. This is where short fiction shows its full capacity for adaptation and innovation. We can distinguish different types of storytelling, each with its own peculiarities. Realistic short story. This form focuses on the description of everyday life and social dynamics. It seeks not the exceptional but the ordinary, elevating it to literary dignity. Authors like Anton Chekhov and Guy de Maupassant are masters at this. Their stories often reveal the small joys, the great disappointments, the hypocrisies, and the virtues hidden in ordinary life. There are no heroes or grandiose events, but the simple, complex existence of ordinary people, which reflects our own lives, making us feel less alone in our experiences. It's like looking in a mirror and recognizing the nuances of our own humanity in others. Here we enter territories less anchored to tangible reality. The fantastic tale transports us to imaginary and surreal worlds, Dalachi Yasano Wodnu Podowodio, where the laws of physics are suspended and the impossible becomes possible. But unlike the fairy tale, which introduces us to a magical world from the very beginning, the fantastic often starts from a recognizable reality and then introduces an inexplicable, destabilizing element that undermines normality. Think of Edgar Allan Poe, with his dark atmospheres and his lucid nightmares, or of Dino Buzzati, who with 60 stories shows us the fragility of man in the face of an almost daily absurdity. The fantastic challenges us to question what we believe to be real, to explore the boundaries of our perception. Science fiction. This subgenre of fiction is a veritable laboratory of ideas. Science fiction explores the implications of technological progress and the possible social, ethical, and philosophical evolution of humanity. It's not just about spaceships and aliens. Science fiction uses what if to project us into possible or impossible futures, analyzing the impact of science on human life. Isaac Asimov explored the laws of robotics. Philip K. Dick probed the nature of reality and identity in dystopian worlds. Science fiction is not just speculative entertainment, but a way to question our present and the directions our civilization might take, often with a warning or a hope. The detective story or detective story focuses on solving a crime or mystery, creating a gripping suspense that keeps the reader on the edge of their seat. From the armchair detective like Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes to the intricate mysteries of Agatha Christie, detective fiction is an intellectual game between author and reader. It's about following the clues, searching for the culprit, reconstructing events, all while the tension builds page after page. A detective novel is not just an investigation into a crime, but often an investigation into human nature, into evil, into the hidden motivations that drive people to commit extreme actions. It teaches us the importance of observation, logic, and deduction, transforming reading into an experience of deciphering. The story, in all its forms, is therefore a bridge between individual experience and the great universal questions, between concrete reality and the infinite possibilities of the imagination. It is a genre that, due to its flexibility, continues to be one of the most vital and productive in contemporary literature. We took a fascinating journey through the genres of short fiction, discovering how each form, from the didactic fable to the magical fairy tale, from the short story that delves into the human soul to the highly versatile short story, offers unique perspectives on the world and our existence. It is a rich and varied panorama where genres evolve, mix, and intersect, demonstrating the inexhaustible vitality of the art of storytelling. Every time we pick up a short story, we are not just reading words. We are participating in an age old dialogue that continues to enchant, stimulate the imagination, and offer new lenses through which to look at reality. If you want to continue exploring the secrets of literature, don't miss the next video.